Arc 6, The Corridor of Memories. Chapter 67, Little King. Witnessing the figure of the man before his eyes ridiculously claim himself to be Louis Arneb, Subaru voiced in surprise. The man's way of appearing was unforeseen and unnatural, but what was further unexpected was the name he had given for himself. It was difficult to conceive it as a mere prank, and even when considered as a phenomenon it yet remained grueling to accept. Ram, they did say something about a form-changing Sin Archbishop, it seems that was regarding this. However, the choice of the form taken is rather questionable. Did you think you would receive any mercy if you chose this appearance? Louis, form-changing, huh? Ah, you mean that prattling loudmouth woman? Grouping us with that thing hurts even us. Besides, the principle of that thing and our solar eclipse is totally different. That is being a copycat, while this is reconstruction. Ram, copycat, reconstruction. Using that interim mighty body, Louis replied. As he frowned at that answer, hearing Ram mention another Sin Archbishop left a bad taste in Subaru's mouth. Though it was only to be expected that there would be sins and Sin Archbishops other than gluttony existing, knowing even one of them stemmed into an immediate dislike for all of them. Though they were supposed to be form-changing, it was intriguing why they had not used that ability till now. Louis, that being said, this body, being treated as an unknown person, was actually quite a famous person, you know? Though sadly, Nesama and the others wouldn't have any memory of the people eaten by us. Ram, famous person. In other words, borrowing the form of an eaten person? Is that so? Truly the worst kind of thing to do, totally fits you people who have committed themselves to doing evil. Nauseating. Louis, wow, Nesama geez, your words are so dirty they hurt, you know? If you say that then we, who still have the memories as your younger sister, will feel ashamed. And that was as far as the interim Louis's conversation went. The interim Louis flexibly leaned forward, and the blow that came from behind he dodged the strike by the hammer of ice. Of course, the attacker was Emilia, yeah. Louis, ho-ho-ho-tsu, how merciless, Emilia-sama. Oniai-chan may have allowed you to let him get a taste of it, but we won't allow such an ambush to hit us, you know? Emilia, if it won't hit then I will just keep attacking till it hits. I don't even want to ambush you, I just want to strike you down. Proclaiming so, Emilia changed the hammer of ice she held in her hands into twin swords of ice and attacked the interim Louis. However, the interim Louis dodged her attack with an extraordinary jump above, and aimed for Emilia's slender hands from a higher angle. Louis, here tsu. Emilia, Kia. Her body sharply rotated, Emilia's frame was thrown off balance. Emilia twisted her body and used her arms in order to prevent herself from falling on her back. However, the interim Louis aimed straight for her face with his toe. Should it be too late then Emilia's face, which was the cutest in the world, would get squashed. At that point, Ram, stop ignoring Ram and fighting all by yourself already. Emilia, Ram. Ram, confirming the movement of the opponent who was aiming for Emilia's face, pointed the wand that she held in her hands towards the face of the interim Louis. At that moment, an extremely small wind was born, and transforming into a blade, was launched to slice up the opponent's face. Louis, palm of the fist king. Nullifying Ram's powerful attack with minimal strength using his palm, the interim Louis avoided the damage and then pounced downwards. His perforating palm received the blade of wind from below, swallowing the wind in its shockwaves and scattering it away subsequently. Crushing the wind from his right hand, the interim Louis then tried to grip onto Ram with his free left hand. However, by the time his hand reached Ram had already taken Emilia away with herself out of the opponent's reach, diving into a downward position outside the battle. Louis, you're doing it. Ram, ha hook. Clenching her swinging free left hand, the interim Louis applauded Ram's judgment and strength of action. Shaking his praise away with a ridiculing exhale, Ram then pulled Emilia's hand towards herself. Ram, Emilia-sama, are you unhurt? Emilia, why yes, thank you. It would have been really painful for me if it wasn't for Ram saving me. Even so. Did you see that just now? Ram, it seems, he has clearly gotten stronger. Ram nodded, gesturing her knowledge upon Emilia's response. And, witnessing the short dialogue between the two, Subaru also held the same opinion as them. Although it was only a short exchange of moves, the interim Louis's maneuvers were swift and accurate. Though it was the opinion of someone inexperienced, these abilities probably exceeded those of Batten Kato's. At the end of that exchange Ram's attack had been completely crushed, as if reality was messing around with them. Louis, the one right now was palm of the fist king. Named by the one who possessed this body in memory, Fist King Neji Rockhart. Possessing the strongest palm, capable of blasting away anything, a powerful person with no enemies on the Gladiator Island. Ram. It seems that you are not familiar with revealing your strengths. In the end, you are just trying to show that you are at the disadvantage. Ram will not be fooled and hesitate because of this. Lewis, we would not mind that at all, Ne-sama. To the point that if you can corner us, then we want you to corner us. See, don't you look back onto the sweet memory of defeat later on? Ram, who knows? Ram only knows of victory, so she doesn't understand that. Lewis, is that so? That's just the waste of not knowing the sourness of life. The moment he said that, the interim Lewis's figure was scratched out of visibility. It would seemingly be more accurate to say that he literally disappeared rather than just moving swiftly. Ram. Ram widened her eyes at the enemy's unexpected move. Even she had been unable to grasp the opponent's position. There was no way for her to escape. Emilia, Ram, watch out. Saying that, this time it was Emilia who grasped Ram and leapt backwards. Several of Emilia's beautiful silver hair were too late to escape that attack, as they were caught up in the impact and got slashed off, scattering around in the aisle. And, the one visible was not a fast warrior, but instead a bald man, as he laughed saying Hahatsu. With a somewhat jumpy appearance and wearing an orange gown, the man smacked his lips at the form of the fleeing Emilia. Lewis, how nice, so nice, isn't it nice? Can you dodge the next one? At that moment, the form of the famous person disappeared into thin air and that of a different one appeared. This seemed as if it was a payback for the earlier surprise ambush. From one blind spot to another, a flashing dagger made accurate attacks energetically. Emilia, whilst holding Ram, continued to defend the attacks off as she got completely dominated. Lewis, ha ha ha. You're doing it, doing it, doing it. How did you see through these secret maneuvers of Leopardorkel? It's truly a mystery. Emilia, that's obvious. I guessed it. Ram, of course, that is not all to it, there is also Ram's support. Emilia-sama. Emilia, why yeah. Flying into a blind spot, the interim Lewis launched an attack. Although the opponent was someone capable of flying around freely, all whilst maintaining that vicious smile, Ram was able to see where he would appear next. On Ram's call, Emilia swung her long legs rapidly. With that, when the bald man appeared next, Emilia's heel struck his side. Lewis, Sue. Emilia, hiya. Emilia thrusted her heel into his face and struck the opponent down. At that moment, Emilia grabbed one of the pillars of ice erecting from the ground in her hands and launched its sharp, pointed tip towards her fallen opponent. If the blow were to not be defended away, the strike would penetrate right through his chest and it would make for a truly unpleasant finish. However, unfortunately enough, it was not effective whatsoever. Emilia, Lewis, carnivorous beast belly Hainelga's skin cannot be pierced, not even by the holy sword, is what they used to say. Shattering the pillar of ice with his bare back, was a middle-aged man with an enormous beard, smiling ferociously. Lying down, he aimed for Emilia's waist with his arm, which was seemingly as tough as a log, and somehow defending away that attack, Emilia made haste and flew backwards. Emilia, hey, at this pace. Ram, Emilia-sama, please let go of Ram. Emilia, no. As if I will abandon Ram, Guck. Ram, that is not the case. Emilia escaped from the enemy with Ram in her grip, and Ram sealed her lips by gently placing a finger onto them. Ram shook her head looking at Emilia, whose words she had interrupted. Ram, it's about time you let Ram also attack, is what it means. The moment she said that, she swept away Emilia's gripped arms, and stood firm directly against the giant. Seeing that, the interim Lewis smacked his rock-hard lips, and launched his palm towards the young girl. Lewis, Hohutsu. Get crushed. Ram, assuming that is even possible, politely say please be crushed, Ram-sama. With that comeback, Ram charged straight towards the approaching palm. If the situation was to be slightly exaggerated, then it could be said that the palm was enormous enough to crush Ram's entire body. Recklessly clashing with the palm up front would be the same as clashing with the front of an approaching car, at the very least, that appeared to be so in Subaru's eyes. In response to that, Ram, at this level, you shouldn't even think you can catch Ram. At the moment those fingers were about to reach her, Ram, with her lips relaxed, dodged the attack with minimal movement and launched her elbow onto her opponent's face. That fair elbow, with its sharpness resulting from its fragility, came in contact with the opponent's nose, mercilessly sending shocks through the body of the carnivorous beast. And, at that moment, Ram's left hand was visibly coming down to grab his throat. Lewis, Sue. Ram, you have continued to blabber nonsense for quite some time, it is getting irritating now. Embrace your misfortune, and choke to death at the hands of Ram here, you despicable thing of a person. The interim Lewis faced problems, as he tried to pursue the crucial points of the body whilst lacking proper training for doing so. Using that to her advantage, Ram resumed her offensive and this time, pointed the tip of her elegant wand towards him. And, as its tip became the center of a beautiful gathering of energy, it subsequently released wind magic, pushing the giant slightly behind. Subaru, strong. Subaru intently stared at the sight of the interim Lewis splattering blood onto the aisle whilst skillfully rolling. Till now, he had concentrated on observing the fight so much that he had forgotten to breathe, but the moment Ram stood upon the battlefield, the flow of the fight faced slight alteration. Of course, though all of it was based on the fact that Ram could not drag on battling for too long. Subaru, Ram fighting this much is a miscalculation I'm happy for. Beatrice, that is not the case, in fact. You cannot rely on just Ram, I suppose. Subaru? What does that mean, was what Subaru intended to ask Beatrice, who was in his arms whilst tilting his head. And, before Beatrice could respond to his query, the answer itself appeared before him. Ram's posture, as she tried to step ahead, broke down. Subaru observed whether she had accidentally slipped, but that was not the case. Ram's forehead and neck were flooded with sweat, and it was visible that every continuing breath was hurting her. At that moment, he wondered how much of defense and prolongation of the battle he could actually speak of, taking the unforeseen spectacle before him into account. Beatrice, if it is for a short period of time, then Ram's fighting sense can follow. However, Subaru, she has a time limit like that. Oh no, Ram. Unaware of such a weakness of hers, he had sent Ram into that dangerous situation. Along with Subaru's panicking voice, the interim Lewis changed into the form of the muscle-rich huge man once again at the same time. Aiming for the stationary Ram, the enemy moved forward briskly with his palm pointed outward, seeking to make a successful onslaught. If she were to receive a direct hit, it was unknown how much of it Ram would actually be able to take. Subaru, Ram. Lewis, shut your mumbling, you are so damn loud for a man. Subaru called out desperately, but Ram showed no signs of response. At that moment, the interim Lewis's blow captured Ram's face directly. Emilia, I know Ram the most, almost as much as I know my own weaknesses. That's why. Emilia, I am fighting alongside Ram. Lewis, Sue. Jumping over Ram's head, with her silver hair fluttering, Emilia positioned her knees elegantly. Against the opponent who had his palm pointing towards the front, the tactics Emilia had chosen were very simple. The move she had chosen was to have an innumerable amount of weapons of ice float in the air, and fire them all towards her opponent at once. Emilia, hi, ya. The interim Lewis launched off his body, as he had positioned his empty palm against the rain of ice. The interim Lewis avoided, dodged, defended away, destroyed, and crossed through the range of the overwhelming storm of ice flawlessly, with nothing managing to even scratch him. That ability was again that of an expert who had achieved heights in proficiency. The truth was, the Fist King who had been victimized by gluttony was perhaps a true warrior who had trained with extreme perseverance to gain such prowess. That power was now being exploited like this. The power he had trained to achieve and the fame he had received for being such a great warrior, gluttony had stolen everything away from him and continued to mock and ridicule his journey of life. In fact, it was possible that they had achieved new heights in skill, heights which had not been achieved by this memory originally. Lewis, ha! He could not help but despair seeing the form of gluttony, who had defended away all of Emilia's attacks and blows with ease and was now sighing an exhale of achievement. Lewis, how nice, this is the best. How do we put it, sort of like, we had completely reconstructed the catalog specs of this memory, but only after we exceeded even that, we felt as if living in this body would be worth it, Sue. Sort of feels like we made better use of the borrowed soul than its original owner? We're glad we were able to live it, Sue. Ram, for someone who is into such evil deeds, you are quite thoughtful of such things, aren't you? Lewis, perhaps so. But you see, for us, who are different from normal people, don't you think it is only natural that what we find happiness in would be different too? Don't you think so? Perhaps you think so. Possibly you think so, Sue? Ram, who knows? Isn't that so, Emilia-sama? Emilia, no, you're wrong. In response response to the words of Ram, who shrugged her shoulders, Emilia responded to the interim vicious-looking man no, Louis Arneb, whilst letting go the chunks of ice she held in his palm. Doing that, and upon receiving that question, Emilia then upheld the spears and axes of ice that got erected from the floor. Emilia, no matter how different you may be from people, you can still be happy and sad by thinking of the same things. I, for example, was always alone, but I enjoyed stacking rocks on river beaches. Ram, that, as well, feels unique in its own way though. Louis, we see. Indeed, we also have memories of stacking rocks on river beaches, but that's. Emilia, see. Louis, but we didn't do it because it was fun. It's just that there was nothing else to do. There was just no other thing to kill our time with. Emilia, is that so? Surprised, Emilia made a confused expression, seeing the happiness of her memories get rejected down. And, behind Emilia, who had that reaction, Ram called out Emilia-sama with more strength than normal. Ram, please do not get swayed by the enemy. The opponent is a Sin Archbishop. If they want to demolish our plans, they will use whatever words necessary. Don't get deceived. Emilia, is that so? That is so. Yes, I know. I won't be deceived anymore. Louis, what can we say? Well, that was a truly hurtful thing to say. Even though our one and only Nesama would leave us behind, so we had no choice but to be doing that. Ram, shut up. Once again, Ram kicked the frozen floor and launched her body towards Louis, who had repeatedly voiced words which had pierced straight through her heart. Her body's condition was not at its best. Well aware of that, Ram charged straight towards the enemy because she knew that she must get her own hands dirty in order to clean up this mess. Ram's intimidating roar piercingly struck Louis. However, Emilia, this time I'm with her, so if you want to surrender yourself, this is your chance. Louis, gratitude for such graciousness, but there's no need for it. Ram, enough of your stubbornness. Making a cute expression but using brutal attacks which were not cute in the least, was Emilia. The duo of the enraged Ram and Emilia went in together, however, Louis repulsively kept switching his form and battle style with absolute freedom, controlling the battle's pace as per his own will. In this overwhelming duel, there were two things that would surprise the observer. First, was the flawless, breath-to-breath coordination between Emilia and Ram. In the previous loop, Emilia's name had been stolen away, due to which her existence was forgotten and her battle style became unknown to all, thus there was discrepancy between her and Julius, who was unaware of her style of fighting. However, there was not the slightest of that discrepancy in Emilia and Ram's case, not even the slightest of lag. Of course, though it does not mean that the adjustments Emilia made were meaningless, what was of utmost relevance here was Ram's wonderful sense of combat. Ram, ha-hook. Louis, tch. Truly, what a nuisance you are, Nesama. Just when he was about to counterattack, her wand was pointed towards his nose and narrowly dodging the subsequent piercing blades of wind, Louis pulled out his tongue. Although what Ram did was not something too substantial, Emilia used such gaps to their advantage by further putting pressure on Louis and halting him from counterattacking. Although her moves weren't too showy, it granted her a convenient position to launch attacks without holding back. The breathtaking cooperation between the duo of Emilia and Ram was all thanks to Ram's judgment. That was one of the things which surprised Subaru the most. And there was something else which was equally surprising. That was Louis, haha. How nice, so nice, very nice, perhaps it is nice, surely it is nice, isn't it nice, maybe it is nice, probably it is nice, as it is probably nice. Gluttonous drinking Sue. Glutton eats Sue. Our mood and feelings are also perhaps gradually pumping up Sue. Emilia, Kohuk. He's right, his strength is gradually increasing. Ram, irritating. Chewing on her own teeth, Emilia launched the twin sword she held in her fist whilst Ram darted a blade of wind aiming for the opponent's feet. However, Louis, becoming the Fist King, crushed Emilia's twin sword with his palm, becoming the leaper, dodged Ram's attack, and becoming the carnivorous beast, rolled his body through the passage of ice. The shockwave he released impacted Emilia and Ram, pushing them backwards as they let out a screech. The coordination between Emilia and Ram was undoubtedly highly refined. However, as surprising as it seemed, Louis's prowess in using and switching memories was even faster. Possibly, by changing forms Louis was able to perfectly reconstruct those memories, with no limitation whatsoever. Solar eclipse, that is indeed what Louis had said. Baton Kato's, before he had lost his body, Louis's elder brother too, in the previous loop had copied Emilia's awesome technique called Icebrand Arts, but its reconstruction was limited to him maintaining his own form. Louis had exceeded that. Solar eclipse was a phenomenon in which the sun got hidden behind the moon's shadow, consequently becoming invisible, but was perhaps Lewis's true body being treated as the sun, which got shadowed by the moon, the reconstructed names and memories. In other words, solar eclipse could safely be assumed to be an ability to change into the form of that respective eaten memories. Consequent was the Lewis before them, using that ability's advantage. And Subaru, if there's solar eclipse, then it's natural to think that there would be lunar eclipse existing too, but what kind of power would come by the hiding of the moon? No, can I even figure it out beforehand? What happened oftentimes in such patterns of copying abilities was that the user's inexperience and lack of proper knowledge to use those abilities resulted in a discrepancy, becoming a cause of defeat. However, the copying abilities of gluttony, which obviously would include Lewis as well, overcome that weakness perfectly by using the victim's body and memories. It was clear that this was a flawless, perfect copying ability. Subaru, this is bad. If Emilia-chan and the rest get overpowered, the situation will change. Tightly grabbing his own chest, Subaru gnashed his teeth at the sense of helplessness which was visible straight in his eyes. Echidna, who had evacuated Ram and Patrash to Teijida while Meili went to attend to the large hordes of witch beasts surrounding the tower. And, considering Julius' battle was still continuing, the violence had spread to 2 layers in the tower. Subaru, Julius, must be struggling a lot too. On second thought, should the opponent here be Reed after all? Beatrice, Subaru? Just what are you saying? Where are you looking, at what? Subaru, where are you looking, and what are you saying, huh, Beatrice? That's. Beatrice, within his arms, heard his muttering and looked up, blinking once. Subaru tried to respond to her and clear up her confusion. Unquestionably, right now, he would be unable to firmly state what he was saying or looking at. But Subaru, what's this? I can sense what everyone is doing and where they are. I can see it? Grabbing his chest in a crushing grip, Subaru slowly realized the existence of that incongruous feeling, those blurry, faint dots of light. They enlightened Subaru regarding the actions of his comrades in the tower. He could also sense Ram and the others, and at that moment Subaru accepted this as if it was something natural, like a third arm by birth. However, this was nothing like being naturally born with a third arm. The moment he noticed that, Subaru realized what an unnatural situation he was in, and a sense of rejection and unacceptability rose within his own heart for his own thoughts. Subaru, go. However, grinding his molars, he swallowed the thought back in so that he didn't spit it out. Right now, if his third arm had developed out of nowhere, then he should rightfully accept it and reject his feelings of rejection for it. He was able to get a rough grasp on where everyone was, in what situation everyone was in. In a situation whereby all his comrades had to split up, could there be any power more suitable than this for such a situation? That's why. Subaru, momentarily, silently, belonged to me. The form of this unnatural power appeared before Natsuki Subaru's soul when he did this. The nature of it reminded him of the Hall of Memories, where he had first faced Louis Arneb and the strength that had bloomed within him before he left that place. He had given it a name as well. Yes, that name was Subaru, Corleones. The moment he called that name, the presence and control of that power flooded over Natsuki Subaru's soul. And, the power, which bore itself with Lion's heart, rightfully gave the ability the authority over itself to Natsuki Subaru. The fruit it bore being Subaru, Nu, Gh. Hook. Beatrice, Subaru. Suddenly, Subaru's feet experienced a crushing weight coming from his body. The moment she noticed that Beatrice shouted in panic, but he was unable to respond due to his headache. A sudden headache to the point that was almost seemingly hazardous strained Subaru's body. What was even worse was the awful fatigue his body was suffering with, accompanying a tear-jerking pain in his bones. The combination of pain and exhaustion crushed his entire body, making Subaru kneel down instantly. Subaru, Gh, ah. A voice echoed within his mind, questioning what this was. The overwhelming strain on his body, a combination of pain and fatigue, his body felt heavy, as if poisoned, and he was panting like he was continuing to run after his stamina had exhausted itself. Rubbing his back, Beatrice screamed in panic at this sudden development. As he felt somewhat eased by the touch of her palm, Subaru turned his eyes towards the situation. At that moment, Subaru was trying to properly exercise his newly gained authority, Sr. Leonis. No, it felt as if he were merely continuing to exercise it. His very condition right now as well, was the result of the usage of Sr. Leonis. If that was so, then just what meaning did that ability hold? Subaru's body felt heavy, stamina was exhausted, until now he had done nothing that would Yes, Subaru himself could not do anything. Instead of him, Lewis, Out of nowhere, a dry voice echoed, as Lewis continued to look while his attack slashed through the sky. Lewis, who had taken the form of the Fist King, was showing off his violent combat techniques, overpowering Amelia and Ram, and just when he raised the fingers of his detestable body, Lewis's arms were grabbed, and his joints got stabbed. And Ram, hook. Without any hesitation or mercy, Ram kneed his joints, breaking Lewis's right arm. A repulsive sound echoed, and the white bones within got broken and became visible, as the fibers of his light pink muscles hung down, and the color of blood spread through the frozen white passage, a sight painful to even look at. Lewis, hook. Ram, too slow. Ram's iron-hard elbow rotated, smashing right into the opponent's face. With the same pace, Ram clutched the enemy's hair at the back of his head and smashed him into the wall, which Lewis somehow stopped, whilst Ram continuing to stab his torso with her right fist. When Lewis's body, just after the sounds of his ribs cracking echoed, tried to get back onto her, Ram delivered her own kick with an unaccepting expression as the giant's body rolled at the floor at a fast pace, splattering blood around. Ram's body feels lighter? Clenching her fists, Ram widened her eyes at the unexpected surprise of her body. Amelia, who had witnessed the sight of her strength, also commented amazing at the power she got newly acquainted with. Beatrice had been concerned about Ram's fatigue, so her actions right now were completely expected. And that was as far as Subaru's thinking went, before he realized. Subaru, this can't be. Could it be that I took Ram's fatigue? Comparing the improvement in Ram's physical condition and the worsening of Subaru's, that indeed seemed to be the case. The truth is, the light Subaru was able to sense there were two in front of him which seemed to stand for Amelia and Ram, and he could sense something flow into himself from there. If his assumption was right and it indeed projected his comrades, who were all facing challenges, then that was. Subaru, Sior Leonis means lion's heart. The answer to that lay in Subaru's knowledge of the stars. The authority of greed, which Subaru had unintentionally named Sior Leonis. That is in fact a Latin word which meant lion's heart, referring to the star named Regulus, the brightest of the Leo constellation. However, Regulus also meant something else aside from Sior Leonis in Latin, which was Little King. Lion's heart and Little King. As lions themselves were called the king of all beasts, the alias of king was well-fitting, it was understandable. But, what did the little affixed to it mean? A little, lion king. The king of, a pride. What exactly made one deserving the title of king? That was Subaru, one who stands by everyone's wishes, that is who a king is. That's why. Natsuki Subaru's ability of Sior Leonis shall lighten the burden on the back of his comrades. So that his comrades can fight without restraints, he shall take all damage for them. If that was the case, then it was decided what Natsuki Subaru was supposed to do. Subaru, if I'm spitting blood, then that means the preparations are all okay. Beatrice, Subaru? Subaru, my bad, I made you worry. My head just hurts a bit, my legs feel strained, my joints ache like all hell, my hands and feet feel like they've been victim to some ambush attack, but I'm alright. Beatrice, ambush attacked. When, where, I suppose. Subaru, probably, when I wasn't looking at the fight. He was unable to clearly explain to Beatrice, whose eyes were filled with concern. However, the source for the pain in his hands and legs was him hiding the wounds taken by Amelia or Ram, and just like what the worst-case scenario would be, both of them had suffered this at the hands of Lewis and Baton Katos. And Subaru didn't mutter a single word about the weight of injuries on his back. For some reason a person like that seemed cool, that's why. Subaru, just like this. If Ram was able to keep these abilities up and keep up with Lewis, they might manage to actually overcome gluttony, unlike how they had failed last time. Win against Lewis, and hurry to catch up to Julius, who was fighting Reed, or in worst-case scenario, face the Titanic Scorpion and the Shadow. Subaru? Thinking that far, Subaru looked at the existence of the lights within his chest yet again. One was Julius, who was battling above the layer Subaru and the others were on, and Melee, who was confronting the hordes of witch beasts from the balcony. Echidna and the others seemed to have safely evacuated to Teijida. These were the ones whose positions could very well be felt by Subaru. However, Subaru, who's that? At a point distanced away from them all, Subaru could feel the existence of the light coming from the same layer as he was in the direction opposite to him. That was the direction the dignified Reed had first appeared from in the previous loop. Wishing for it to not be read, Subaru confirmed the presence of certain confidence within him as he looked on with somewhat of hesitation. And Subaru, Beatrice. Beatrice, Huck. Minya. As he shouted from the back of the aisle, Beatrice instantly came to notice the mishap and whitened her palm. At that very moment, shining purple crystals were born as the consequence of her chant. Floating in the air with terrifyingly sharp tips, they were fired like bullets from a gun the subsequent instant. They flew overhead Amelia, Ram and Lewis, who were fighting in the aisle, towards further beyond. And, from there, it collided with an attack which was aiming right for Amelia's back. As an excruciating sound of shattering glass echoed, a blinding light broke through and exposed the white corridor to itself. Amidst the sparkles of the shattered ice and crystals, a blinking red light was visible in between darkness. As soon as he laid his eyes on it, the pain in Subaru's heart multiplied several times. Once again, the threat repeated itself, further worsening the situation. However, at this point, the pain in his heart was not because of seeing that dot of red light. The red dot of light and the faint light Subaru could sense within his chest, which showed him the position of his comrades, they overlapped. That could mean only one thing. Subaru, what does this mean? You. Swinging its tail, which wielded a long and sharp needle, the black shadow, clad in armor like black shell over its body, was the form of the titanic Scorpion. However, at this moment, the Scorpion's appearance held a totally different meaning for Subaru. For the existence which had revealed itself there was. Subaru, is it you, Shala? Facing a reality he did not want to face, accepting a truth he did not want to accept, Subaru called out in a voice mixed with rage and despair. Hearing that voice, the Scorpion, lacking a mouth to respond with words, lifted up its enormous pincers and clanked them, as if affirming his words. A clank echoed. Chapter 68, The Woman of Scorpius. When he had first heard of Shala's name, it's not as if he had thought nothing of it. It was not because he possessed some emotional attachment to the name Shala. It was because Subaru had memories of that word. Shala was the name of a star which glowed in the sky. Subaru was acquainted with the single term which bestowed meaning to the Scorpius. To think the true identity of the one who took upon the name of the Scorpius was the Scorpion clad in a jet black shell, that answer was something truly straightforward and simple. So straightforward, that one would actually grow suspicious of the one who chose that name. However, at present, the first candidate for that lack of sense was the one she referred to as Master Natsuki Subaru. The problem here was how unlikely it was that Subaru got the chance to bestow her with that name regardless of the presence or absence of his memories, and how they had no leeway to confirm that right now. Before his eyes, the tag team of Amelia and Ram continued their fierce battle with the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Louis Arnab. Interposing in the space of that battlefield, in the interior of the aisle, the jet-black titanic Scorpion let out a fiendish sound by clanking its huge pincers and stared towards them with deep red compound eyes. The ominous huge pincers had evolved for the purpose of slaughter, wielding such sharpness that gave rise to the conjecture that they possessed enough strength to easily cut apart bones or internal organs of the human body with a single clank of its edges. Red compound eyes, two ominous huge pincers, multiple legs supporting its large frame, a shell boasting the strength as that of an iron armor, all of them were symbols of refinement for the purpose of destruction and violence. The truth was its fighting strength did not contradict the sense of ferocity its outer appearance gave. Time and time again, Subaru had confirmed that with his very eyes through the conflict till now, through the world he had seen till now, rather, he had experienced its true feeling with his own body. Subaru, why? The moment that realization spouted within him, certain happenings of a previous loop appeared before Subaru. Driving away the brutal attack of the titanic Scorpion, the moment they thought they had somehow managed to temporarily withdraw, Subaru and the others had bathed in the explosion caused by the parting gift of that evil beast, resulting in Beatrice and Echidna, the two of them being deprived of their lives. The intolerable rage he felt back then was something he was incapable of forgetting. The wrath he embraced directed resentment towards the powerlessness of his own self, and at the same time he also had that rage pinning down the titanic Scorpion who had been behind that slaughter. The subject of that wrath, the titanic Scorpion, its true identity had been of one who was supposed to be his comrade, Shala. Now that he knew that, what occupied Subaru's mind was merely violent emotion with no place to belong, accompanied with suspicion. Why had Shala taken the form of the titanic Scorpion? Why was Shala attacking Subaru and the others, and trying to kill them? Why did Shala reveal her true nature at this stage of the game, and was interrupting in between the battle? Why, why? Beatrice, Subaru, calm down, in fact. First, take deep breaths, I suppose. Subaru was tormented by such thoughts after greeting such shocking truths. Softly calling Subaru's name, who was in that state, and restoring him back to sanity, was Beatrice, standing next to him. With his hand grasped by her tiny palm, Subaru noticed for the first time that he had forgotten to even breathe. Abiding by the command, Subaru slowly inhaled deeply, then exhaled. And Beatrice, keep it up, in fact. Is it true that that thing is Shala? At Beatrice's question, once again, Subaru affirmed to himself. Sir Leonis, though the authority, a characteristic unique to him, had just blossomed within him and he had only recently managed to get a grasp on it, it conveyed the whereabouts of his comrades to Subaru and took over the inferiorities in the physical form of allies, that alone was unquestionable. Henceforth, Subaru could vaguely catch on to the locations of all his comrades within the tower: Emilia, Ram, Beatrice, Julius, Melee, and Echidna. And that faint, warm sensation he could feel from those comrades of his, he could feel the same from the Titanic Scorpion. If the relative positions of all his comrades within the towers were to be considered, no other candidate came to mind. Henceforth, that Titanic Scorpion was unmistakably Subaru. It's Shala for sure. I don't know why, but she's turned into a huge scorpion. Beatrice. It is true that she was a girl with an uncertain true identity in the first place, in fact. That true identity, being that of a slightly big bug, isn't even worthy of astonishment, I suppose. Subaru, amazing courage you have. Asserting the scorpion to be a mere bug, Beatrice warded it off with not the ability to comprehend, but the ability to respond to the call. Coiling his tongue at that approach of coping with the situation, Subaru at that moment glared at the Titanic Scorpion for once. Red compound eyes with the aim of their gaze unknown, stabbed by the scowl coming from the opposite direction. Subaru, how about you give some answers? Your true identity has been uncovered already, you bastard. Subaru, making excuses or flicking your tongue before the prey, there must be something you have to do. Hook. When he raised his harsh voice, he felt his head ache with the weight of the atmosphere and inferior physical form. However, Subaru ignored that pain and sought a response from the Titanic Scorpion. However, the Titanic Scorpion, maintaining its outward appearance which suggested its inability of will and communication, never even once tried to respond. Subaru, are you not going to make a single excuse? Murmuring powerlessly, Subaru thought while fighting his urge to vomit. Just like the memories he had recalled earlier, Subaru had been made to taste hardships time and time again by this Titanic Scorpion. With unruly naivete, the one who had continued to show her courtesy and affection to Subaru without ever attempting to conceal it, Shala having gotten cheated by her, deceived by her, that truth piercingly stabbed through his chest. How her smile, her words, her attitude, anything and everything had been made up fakes. How she had deceived Subaru and others, and had been a traitor. Subaru, no. Traitor, sadly expressing that notation, Subaru stiffened his cheeks with a dicey sense of unease. Shala betrayed them. That thought itself was a conclusion which could not be helped considering the existing situation. However, whether or not everything relating to Shala had truly been fiction had room for argument. Of course, it is plausible that all of Shala's words and deeds till now had been acting and that her smile, bonding, anything and everything were all just swindles for deceiving them. It was plausible. But, for what? Had she intended to crawl into Subaru and the rest's trust through her acting, her intentions would pose her as an opponent to Subaru and the rest. However, had Shala aimed for that, she must have obtained chances to chop off their sleeping heads time and time again, even without having to do something like diving into the battle at this stage of the game. Precisely that, whilst she crawled into gaining such deep trust from Subaru and the others, she must have had infinite chances to slowly and secretly poison them as well. Missing those chances, why did she unconceal her betrayal now? That could never be a completely rational enemy. Going out of her way and putting up a dubious pretense and becoming a comrade for Subaru and the others, what could be the point of all that? Listening to Subaru's requests and even cooperating and stopping Melee, displaying hyper magic against the hordes of witch beasts from the balcony, it was unknown what meaning all that held. None of it made any sense, did it? Subaru, the reason why I end up thinking that, is it because I got mesmerized by her fair legs visible in her hot pants? Beatrice, if Subaru's thoughts are becoming blurred by that, then Shala's plan has not been discarded completely, in fact. Subaru, right. My feelings are aligned with Emilia-chan. Arg, the end. Just when they jointly felt discomfort towards Shala's conduct, he suddenly had his arm pulled by Beatrice. It was not objection, but an action of overbearing extrication. Overhead, Subaru, who had unintentionally stepped upon that foot bellow, a white corona strike through and he picked up his life from within the breadth of his hair. Beatrice, it seems, there's no time to sit and chatter, I suppose. While saying that, raising Subaru's hand other than the one which she had grasped, Beatrice's environs gleamed faintly. Clad in the violet light which evolved along with sharpened pointed tips in large numbers. As if enclosing Subaru and Beatrice, the violet arrows unfolded, facing the Titanic Scorpion directly, and were shot. At that moment, the white corona from the same front ward came flying and clashed with the violet arrows, and the light performed a boisterous dance. Subaru, you. Beatrice, duck down, in fact. It won't be good if you receive a direct hit, in fact. The glittering violet light raged on, and a sound like that of shattering glass beautifully chained through the aisle. On the other side of the spectacle, where the glitter seemingly grilled his eyes, the flash fired by the Titanic Scorpion that attack by the sharp tail stinger had been established to relentlessly take away Subaru's life. The single arrow possessing that advancing intent to kill was warded off and repelled away by the 100 arrows stemming from the magic Beatrice had spun, making her protect themselves by jumping. However, that resource consumption had been overwhelming. Beatrice, not good, in fact. At this rate, our mana will get exhausted in no time, I suppose. Subaru, what'll happen if it gets exhausted? Beatrice, Betty and Subaru will get pierced through by that single arrow together, in fact. Being together aside, he could not come to accept that circumstance. Against the assailing attack, Beatrice's remaining strength could not last for long, that was what she had reported herself. With their circumstances continuing to deteriorate, there was a need to somehow defeat the situation before they were crushed by the pressure. And at the moment immediately after, Subaru gritted his teeth due to the impending sense of crisis. Emilia, swishing that right above someone's head, it's dangerous, you know. The sound of silver bells chimed potently, and a large rock of ice energetically struck the shell of the Titanic Scorpion. A hammering sound echoed, and surprise was reflected in the emotionless compound eyes of the Scorpion. The one who managed to draw out that reaction was the one who created a wall of ice in the aisle and subsequently kicked it, decisively plunging into the bosom of the Scorpion, Emilia. Her silver hair fluttering, leaping upon the Scorpion with magnificence, she wielded a long sword of ice. Emilia, targeting Subaru and Beatrice. Bullying the weak ones shows you are a coward. With the sword capable of slashing down anything with a single hit, she brushed away the large pincers, and the Titanic Scorpion made a speedy withdrawal using its multiple legs, wriggling like a worm. However, Emilia pursued the retreating large build, and in the cramped aisle thus commenced the three-dimensional battle between the beauty and the Scorpion. Emilia, Haya. Aya. Aya. The long sword, twin sword, lance, large hammer hands given shape to smash to a light report, and the falling, glittering ice shards flutter around the gracefully dancing Emilia. The potent pincers of the Titanic Scorpion, the strength they had was their highlight as they easily shattered the weapons of the enemy they had come to accept and hid their Herculean cutting strength. However, that destruction of weapons did not pass on to Emilia. Emilia's ice brand arts was an ability capable of creating countless weapons through her magical power. The disposable weapons of ice were no greater than trifling articles to Emilia. No matter how many times were they to be smashed, shattered, it neither hurt nor itched Emilia. Emilia, hi, ya. The pincers and tail stinger waving about, and Emilia, who had dodged them, launched the picket of ice floating midair. It collided head-on with the corona shot by the Scorpion, resulting in light scattering across. It was the overwhelming offense and defense of the two, one human and one inhuman. What was worth admiring was Emilia's sense against an enemy for whom a coping method different from those used against people was required, having jumped in without any hesitation whatsoever and continued hanging on. For Emilia, who readily took upon an instinctive battle style, the form and shape of the enemy were not absolute. Not by piling up strict disciplining, but the greater than sufficient battle sense within her body told her of her enemy. Henceforth, the offense and defense of Emilia and the Titanic Scorpion was taking alternately favorable and unfavorable turns, and gave rise to a stalemate. However, with Emilia fighting the Titanic Scorpion, another progressing battle was unable to avoid remaining unchanged. Even if that battle, at maximum, had commenced with an attack by the both of them at the same time, the offense and defense with the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony Louis Arneb had been left to Ram alone. Subaru, Ram. Ram, you are audible, there is no need to shout every second. As it dampens spirit. Upon Subaru's voice, who had been fearful regarding her, she responded with an outrageously cruel reply. Ram confronted Louis in the middle of the aisle all by herself. Having her back face his side, she clashed head-on with the large build exerting tremendous pressure. Of course, with Emilia's fallout the battle had turned worse, Subaru was able to see that, but... Ram, Kuhak. Louis, Hegahatsu. Nesama is just so harsh. With a smile glued to his face, the large build, shaking his head about, took a single step backward instead of jumping. The rebuff he had experienced head-on, his retreat was to disperse its impact. In front of the large build who did that, Ram sharply gyrated her body and commenced a resolute, extremely close combat with the expert who named himself as the Fist King. The unarmed martial arts Lewis was using had been endowed with immeasurable bloodshed to the name of the Fist King. However, through merely the sense of gaps, Ram was somehow managing to keep up with those fighting techniques which had been taken to the extremities, and their proper tracks. Even now, as she unleashed herself, her fair fist fired into the median line of the enemy mercilessly. Lewis, how amazing! So amazing! Isn't it amazing? Isn't it too amazing? Ne-sama is just too strong, much more than what we knew Tsu. What's this? What's this? Why are you able to move so much? Ram, don't talk as if you know anything, kindly keep quiet and die. Bathing in the vehement impact, passing his comment while somewhat writhing in pain was Lewis. Lewis had gotten right arm broken and was in a state of plugging the roots of his arm currently. In that state, even if it is the body of a man who had mastered unarmed combat, it would not be possible to bring out those specs. The experience points of the martial arts cultivated within the Fist King were being competed against by Ram, who had been released from her inferior physical form. To a point that the inborn natural specs Ram had were keeping up with the enemy. However, as Ram continued to put up a hard fight, as much as she fought hard, Subaru, GH, bug. Welling up of nausea, limitless rise in temperature. Within his head, the seemingly cursing noise of gongs being struck buzzing in his ears accompanied with a headache, whilst experiencing these Subaru fought against getting distracted and letting his guard down. This was what Ram felt and tasted normally. It was now, mercilessly scraping off Subaru's mind and body with a rasp. Whether it was possible to get used to it or not, the chills continued becoming heavier with each passing second, and as Ram's voltage rose, its weight rose accordingly as well. However, that nausea, that headache, that sense of fatigue, Subaru kept them at the back of his molars and patiently endured them. Thanks to this authority, he could take on Ram's suffering and grant her the strength to fight. At this point, the recoil of Subaru having to suffer was a compensation they must accept and pay. His entire body felt heavy, limbs creaking, ears hurting of noise, the torn thighs aching, the struck and damaged abdomen screaming in agony, the rate of breathing rising due to the usage of all strength, and vision flickering in red and white. This much, he should simply bluff and show that it is of no concern. Ram, foolish, truly. And, glancing towards Subaru who had bent down behind Beatrice, Ram's lips faintly murmured something is what it seemed like. However, the authority was only capable of taking on the burden, it could not convey everything regarding the partner. The lightly whispered words went unheard and the only result they bore was Subaru furrowing his eyebrows. However, Ram, kindly collapse already. If you drag this on for too long, the ones charged with our household chores will all faint. Lewis, how cold, so cold, isn't it cold, because it is so cold. Ne-sama, Ne-sama. Let's play more. Let's have fun. Even though we are sisters, we've never even once engaged in a bout like this, you know, isn't it, Sue? Ram, then, your wish shall be granted. Narrowing her cold eyes, Ram struck the side of the frolicking Lewis's face with her palm. At the same pace, as if in flow, she struck countless blows on the entirety of Lewis's body, delivering rebuff to the receptacle in the same direction. Lewis turned completely defensive and folding up the jaw with her palm directly underneath it, Ram grabbed her opponent's collar and forcefully bashed his face into the wall on the side, and thereafter drove her lovely knees into his head. Lewis, PGH, Gug. With his face caught between the bare wall and the knee, Lewis had his nose crushed as he collapsed, bleeding. Towards the Lewis's naked nape, Ram turned her palm relentlessly. Within that palm was whirling an extremely small blade of wind. However, its potency was nothing to be made light of. The swirl of the wind blade thus formed in her palm had enough strength to gouge out any vitals of the body. Grand destruction unneeded, a minimalistic attack to merely gouge out the vitals of the body and bring down the enemy. If the neck was to receive it, regardless of how thick the neck of even the Fist King may be, he would still be equally helpless. And, Ram's attack settled the battle. Geez, always doing things as you please when someone's sleeping. This is why, youngest little sisters can't be selfish. As an elder herself, Ne-sama must also agree, right? Ram, huck. The moment when the strike to the nape was settled, Fist King's form changed, and Ram's palm missed its aim. The moment initially afterwards, what seized Ram's petite torso from the front ward was the brutal backwards kick of, with a strikingly short height, Lewis no, lay batten Kato's. Subaru, switch. Lay, no, we're telling you Tsu. It wasn't something we were aiming for and then did it or anything, by sheer chance. The moment we opened our eyes, little sister was in an unfavorable position, that's all it is. Oni-san can understand, right? The feeling when your sibling is so bad at the game being played that you can't stand it and end up taking away the controller? Languidly stretching out his tongue, with his dubiously long dark brown hair, Lei smiled at Subaru. With that evil smile of Lei's, Ram, who had received the fierce kick directly in her guts, had been pushed backwards to an immense distance. And she distorted her cheeks and expression at that singular counterattack and inhaled a rough and large breath. At the same time, Subaru took over the origin of what had stopped her in her tracks through the authority. And Subaru, gu, jaya hook. Pain that was enough to make him give up springing forth in his abdomen, Subaru shouted at the scorching heat difficult to bear. He was tormented by the extreme pain which seemed as if his guts had been stirred up and damaged with a blazing hot rod of iron. His field of vision whitening at the impact, he understood that his internal organs within were all screeching at once. By this, he understood. In actuality, this blow by Lei had been the true and sole decisive blow of the battle, which would have unquestionably ended the fight with Ram. Lei, ha? Just as thought. So it was thanks to Oni-san that Nesama, for whom it should be impossible to move, was able to move is what it means tsu. Geez Nesama, in the time your little sister wasn't there you deepened your relationship with the one your little sister had feelings for, is that what it means? Blurting out nonsense, while looking at the screaming Subaru, Lei struck the floor with his heel. At his feet, peeking out from his heel was a hidden blade of short length and its sharp tip had been soaked with Ram's blood. She had been stabbed. Subaru had taken up that pain and was now suffering with it. Otherwise this scorching heat, the blade may have been varnished with poison or something. His body temperature degraded at such vigor that it made him shiver, and the immense sweat all over his body started to flow. Beatrice, Subaru. Ram, Barusu, kindly stop. Beatrice was astonished upon Subaru's screech and Ram shouted, seemingly having guessed the situation. Stabbed, the wound in the abdomen letting out massive amounts of blood from the guts. It was natural to feel malaise if by the loss of blood, it still had no effect on movement. However, Subaru desperately shook his head. He could not return this agony to Ram. The moment he would return it, Ram would be rendered immobile. It was an obvious flow. It is best if their pain settles upon Subaru. If that were to be done, everyone would still be able to continue without losing. He must assist those who were fighting. Subaru, not yet. Ram, Beatrice-sama. Kindly take Barusu and stand back. He is only an obstruction. At Subaru's condition, who had his voice seem like incoherent murmuring, Ram prompted her quick judgment. She rolled the tunic she had taken off around her wound in the guts, thus trying to stop the bleeding, and on top of that decided to continue the battle. In exchange for that she urged Beatrice to have Subaru withdraw from this place. Beatrice abided by Ram's judgment and pulled Subaru's sleeve. Beatrice, Subaru, it's just as how Ram says, I suppose. For now, get away from this place and Subaru, that won't do. If I get away from here. Shaking his head towards Beatrice, who was pulling his sleeve, Subaru attempted remaining in this place. Right now, if he were to get away from this theater, the effect of or Leonis may get cut off and the battle Ram was managing may collapse at once. If that happened, then what would be the point of having Subaru withdraw from here? Ram, Kook. Emilia-sama. For once, come over here. Emilia, eh? Ah, HM. I get it. Looking at Subaru, who was attempting to remain here, Ram called upon Emilia. At that call, Emilia, who had been concentrating on her battle with the Titanic Scorpion, flew backwards greatly. The Titanic Scorpion tried to go after her, but that pursuit was hindered by a humongous ice wall which seemingly covered the aisle. Of course, in front of the Titanic Scorpion's pincers, the ice wall could stand for not more than a single second, but that single second was sufficient for Emilia's retreat. At that point, whoa, just a second. Even if you come back with such energy, did you think we'll just say is that so and overlook you? Ram, keep quiet. Lei, whoops. Lei, slurping on his tongue, swung his dagger towards the retreating Emilia's back. Ram, closing in with a low stance, brushed it away energetically by sweeping it with her legs. And Emilia flew overhead of Lei, whose attack had been overturned, as if jumping over a hurdle. The result of that, as Lei stood in the aisle. Shala, huck. Lei, tch. Ha ha tsu. Well, aren't you doing it tsu? The Titanic Scorpion, trying to pursue Emilia, viciously clashed with Lei, who had been left alone in the theater. Though the compound eyes of the Titanic Scorpion were originally turned towards Subaru, even still, there was no way it could simply ignore the one standing in between as an obstruction and be able to pass freely. The pincers of the Titanic Scorpion swung, and Lei warded them off with a miraculous technique of the blade with his daggers. Though the brittle blades seemed that they would get shattered easily by a single strike, Lei's ability was able to do that extremely easily. At the same pace, glancing backwards, seeing as how the enemy collided with the enemy. Ram, Emilia-sama. Take Borusu. Emilia, leave it to me. Hearing Ram shout as she dashed from the aisle, Emilia held the crouching Subaru in her arms like a baby. Shouldered by Emilia's slender arms, Subaru have rise to a surprised voice saying whoa, but... Emilia, I'm sorry, stay put for a second, okay? Subaru, to be carried by a girl, my pride got hurt. Ram, there's no way there's any pride even left to be hurt at this point. Kindly stay put and get treated like luggage. Emilia's speed did not decrease even slightly whilst shouldering Subaru, who had blurted such thoughtless comments. Behind them unfolded the clash between Lei and the Titanic Scorpion, and regardless of what the conclusion of it should become, the two would surely be obstructing each other's way for some time for the moment. With that being said, Beatrice, Shala must be aiming for Subaru, in fact. The direction in which if you take your eyes off and lose sight of where it may come from is dangerous, I suppose. Ram, that is the problem, Beatrice-sama. Is that thing really Shala? Running alongside Emilia, who was shouldering Subaru, Ram and Beatrice exchanged thoughts on the situation. What Ram had asked demanded confirmation of what Subaru had previously convicted. Hearing that, Beatrice gave a sidelong glance to Subaru and nodded. Beatrice, that is what Subaru believes, in fact. That attack of firing light also coincides, I suppose. Ram, the attack seen from the balcony, or during the time of exiting the sand, is it? Hearing Beatrice's analysis, Ram furrowed her eyebrows. She then glanced towards Subaru, speaking to Subaru who was being carried Emilia's arms. Ram, Borusu, whatever you are doing, disconnect it. At that pace. Subaru, I will have to endure it? I'll say this, I'm a man, you know. Enduring and being patient is the special right of us men. Ram, quite a thing to say after being in such a tattered state and being carried by Emilia-sama. Subaru, Ugu. At Ram's words, he was unable to voice even Ugh properly. The truth is, due to the effect of taking over Ram's inferior physical form, ignoring his spirit, even breathing was painful for him. The burden increased each passing second and the exhaustion felt as if it were some curse that would eat away his life. At the strong act being put up by that Subaru, Emilia whispered as I thought. Emilia, Subaru, you're doing something, right? Midway through, my body also became really light, and the parts where I was damaged and wounded didn't hurt either. Beatrice, in case you are having Subaru push himself. Beatrice, it's not Betty, in fact. This is what Subaru is doing by himself. Through an authority, I suppose. Even Betty wants to stop him if he can be stopped, in fact. Emilia, authority. Against Emilia, who had offered her frank advice, Beatrice denied her involvement and made an astringent face. Emilia and Ram furrowed their eyebrows together in response to what she had pronounced. Calling it an authority, Beatrice gave the impression that she had an idea about the power Subaru was using. Ram, Beatrice-sama, what would be an authority? Beatrice. Something like the backwards compatibility of a divine protection, I suppose. Subaru is pushing himself quite a bit and using it, in fact. That is the cause behind Emilia and Ram's states as well, I suppose. Hearing that, Emilia inhaled while Ram sharpened her gaze. Though she was physically supposed to be fine, what dwelled in Ram's light crimson eyes was powerful rage. With such eyes, she glared at Subaru. Ram, taking up Ram's burden as how you please, when did you become so admirable? Subaru, my bad. I'm a gentleman. That's why, I end up smartly taking the girl's luggage. Ram, and as a result of that, become a girl's luggage instead? It can be said countless times, you've got it backwards. Ram's continued sigh somewhat felt as if she had given up on Subaru's attitude. She must have understood as well, that Subaru had no intentions of returning that burden. Honestly speaking, possessing it forever would be tiresome, but even so, at least while they are in the middle of the conflict. Subaru, that's it. Thinking that far, at last, Subaru finally turned his consciousness towards not the internal organs within the depths of his abdomen, but something else. His consciousness passed through the body of what was his self, and largely spread out to the scope perceivable to him. And, grasping onto Sr. Leonis, he connected to the conditions and positions of his comrades. Without any change, Inteyajito were Echidna and Rem, along with Patrash. Slightly away from them was Gan at a lower floor, and then Subaru, I knew it. Emilia, I knew it? What did you know? Subaru, Meili is, even now, obstructing the witch beasts from the balcony. Though faintly distant, the flickering, blurry light on the balcony of the fourth layer was Meili. Though the situation was that Shala had broken away, she was mobilizing her own strength and was dealing with the large hordes of witch beasts. He held the deepest admiration for the strenuous effort she was making, and he felt grateful as well. Beatrice, that girl was not attacked by Shala is what that would mean, in fact. Subaru, exactly. Subaru affirmed what Beatrice had stated, while on top of Emilia's shoulders. The moment immediately after the battles had broken out in each of the respective places, Subaru had left dealing with the witch beasts advancing towards the watchtower to the two of Meili and Shala. Thereafter, with Shala unraveling herself in form of the titanic scorpion to attack Subaru and the rest, of course, the well-being of Meili, who was supposed to be with her, became a matter of concern, but Subaru could feel her safety. In other words, Subaru, Shala turned into that after parting with Meili. At any rate, Shala hasn't laid a finger on Meili. How relevant that was to the present situation, he could not think about that with an exhausted mind. On top of that, even if they continued running at this rate, Emilia, we need to solve the problems rising up, otherwise we'll just get cornered no matter how much we run. With a shout similar to a cry, Emilia perfectly expressed the present condition of Subaru and the others. The first of the 5 problems, the hordes of witch beasts, for that was Meili, the titanic scorpion and gluttony were continuing trying to devour each other, and he felt no signs of the arrival of the jet black shadow. However, Rita Stria, equipped with absurd violence like the hammer of God, was. Ram, Huck, kindly stop. Ram, who was running and leading the vanguard, stretched her hand towards the rear and restrained Emilia and the others. In front of the momentarily stopped 3, a shockwave pierced through the following instant. The shockwave diagonally bisected the aisle seemingly made of stone, creating an entrapment of rubble and smoke. Seeing the destruction of the watchtower which had professed itself as indestructible, taking into account Subaru's memories, this would be the 3rd time, but if being crushed by the shadow was to be kept out of the picture, this would be the 1st. And, the true identity of that destruction was Miss Ram. Along with Emilia-sama and Beatrice-sama, is it? Subaru, Julius. Evading the erupted smoke, flying backwards greatly, the figure with a white outfit contaminated by blood and dust was the good-looking man, Julius Jaculius. Stepping onto that place and the cause of the shockwave, he quickly turned his yellow eyes backwards and glanced into the dark-colored eyes of Subaru, who was sitting atop Emilia's shoulders. Julius, though I believe it has only been a few minutes since we parted ways, it seems you were damaged quite harshly, isn't it? Subaru, shut up. For once, I'm unhurt. Julius, I do not see the cold sweat of an unhurt human, though. Julius closed a single eye at Subaru, who had a pallid face and blurted out rough words with a faint breath. Even he, who possessed good judgment, had not been able to understand the effects of the authority of Sior Leonis, as expected. And unfortunately, no longer remained any time for them to calm down and converse about it. Subaru, I'm begging you, please say you slashed Reed's throat. Julius, reporting what differs from reality, is an extraordinarily difficult choice as a knight. Beatrice, that already makes for the answer, I suppose. Subaru's wish, which seemed more like a prayer, had been implicitly repudiated by the excessively serious response. While feeling his hope turn into despair, Subaru made a bitter expression. He felt his earbuds hurt by a sound as that of crushing of the wall's fragments. Ha! So you're regreetin' all the women you've gathered in here, you. It was just startin' to get a bit boring after walkin' round freely. So are y'all gonna be my opponents, aye? Ram, the worst progression of events, isn't it? Following Julius, the one who showed his form through the smoke was the great man with long red hair, casually dressed on only a single side, with a tall figure built with muscularity red violence, Rita Stria. At the form of Reed, boldly stepping into the aisle of the 4th layer and not the 2nd layer, Ram commented with a low voice. With identical astonishment Emilia said you. With a quivering voice. Emilia, why are you on this floor? Aren't you supposed to be unable to exit from there? Reed, hey, don't you be making me laugh, fiercely frizzlin'. I live where I wanna live, slash down those whom I wanna slash down, and sleep with women I wanna sleep with. As if I'll be aberdeen by the customs of others. Beatrice, just how cheap is this guy, in fact? Beatrice, whilst trembling with fear, smacked her lips at Reed's self-centered philosophy. However, it was fact that Reed had appeared in this place and was standing in the way of Subaru and the others, obstructing them. With this was, Reed at the main gate, and Gluttony and the Titanic Scorpion at the rear gate. This was the location of a tremendous battle. Subaru, though it may be useless to just talk. Right now, everything happening in the tower is. Reed, I know it's becoming quite the ruckus, you know? But, it ain't concernin' me. If the ones that got in will be gettin' in my way, then I'll slash 'em down, or if they'll open my way, then I won't kill 'em at least. Whoops, well, those takin' part in the trial got'd be a special case. Though that still ain't different from pickin' a fight with me. Subaru, then. Reed, hey, young fish. Don't just say any boring shit now. Twisting his words, Subaru tried to somehow extract information out of Reed. With his spirit of the sword losing its proper way, he made him shut his mouth. As if an electric shock, pressure which caused physical numbness jolted Subaru, no, not only Subaru, but all four standing in the aisle. Otherwise, it may have jolted the entire tower itself. This merely brought the displeasure of the lone man. So this was just his sense of intimidation. Upon Pleiades' watchtower were threats aside from this giant man. Subaru, the way to deal with one of Gluttony and that shadow hasn't been found either, and still. Julius, Subaru, regarding that, I have a good news and bad news from my side. Said Julius, preparing to use his night sword, commencing with his words. At his commencement, with words as those from some overseas drama, Subaru stiffened his cheeks. Good news and bad news, though it was an expression common in literary works, hearing those words in reality like this gave a terrible feeling of his chest being scratched apart. Gulping down saliva for once, Subaru affirmed the words good news and bad news in his mouth. Subaru, then, say the good news first. Julius, regarding the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony nowhere to be seen whom you are getting anxious about, there is no need to be on the lookout for him. I can assure you regarding that. Subaru? I don't know on what basis you're saying that, but it's certainly good news. Then, what's the bad news? Whether he found his tracks, or whether he got hands on proof of him having not arrived in the first place or having exited the tower, Subaru raised a single eyebrow in response to what Julius had pointed out. If there was to be only one Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, then certainly the problems they had to deal with would reduce by one. If the cards in their hands and the cards in the hands of the opponent were to be seen and compared, what would be the ideal course of action? Subaru considered that with his body in a horribly bad state. Before that Subaru, Julius softly exhaled, and continued. Julius, the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Roy Alford is over there. Subaru, With an earnest tone, Julius turned the leading edge of his night sword towards the front. What stood ahead of the pointing tip of that night sword was only the great man with the smile of a ferocious shark. It could not mean anything else. The man with the smile of a shark was standing there. However, Julius continued his words, as Subaru and the others stood stunned. Julius, the one before our eyes, the first-generation sword saint, Reed Astrea. He is Roy Alford. End of chapters 67 and 68, Little King.